Hey guys, it's Elisa with One Extraordinary Marriage, and I wanted to just come on board with you today because Tony and I are working on a new program. And one of the things that came up as we're talking about communication is this whole idea of the silent treatment. So I want to talk about why it doesn't work. I'm curious, there are a bunch of you jumping on. I'm wondering, just to show of hands, if anybody has actually tried the silent marriage or silent treatment in your marriage and how that's worked out for you. So if you've tried it, just raise your hand, say me, say yes, throw out some hearts, just so I know if any of you have actually done this. I myself used to be a very strong proponent of the silent treatment. I did it for years, and part of the reason that I had done it for so long was because, not deliberately, that was what I saw growing up. You know, for a lot of us, we bring into our marriages what we have seen modeled in our own families when we're growing up. And my mom, she knows that I have shared this before, so this is not like I'm, letting the family skeletons out or anything like that. But my mom did the silent treatment. She would withdraw anytime there was any type of conflict between her and my dad. And I just want to do a big thank you, those of you that are inviting friends, that are, swiping left to right or up and down, depending on if you're Android or iPhone, usually too upset to talk. And that is a really good point, and that's why we want to talk about the silent treatment and what it does and how it really impacts your marriage. Because a lot of times, just like you said there a few minutes ago, you are too upset to talk. The problem is that for a lot of folks, the silent treatment becomes a default, right? They're like, well, I'm just going to shut down, and your face goes something like this. You know what I'm talking about. It's like you're a stone, you're set in concrete because you're not engaging in the conversation. You've shut down emotionally. You're feeling sometimes you feel overwhelmed. Sometimes you're having, just a strong physiological response where your blood pressure is up, your palms are sweaty, your stomach is doing that crazy thing it does when you get really stressed out. Your heart is just racing and you're like, I just can't deal with this. And so your body literally goes into like a shutdown. And, I know, thank you for the hearts. I know a lot of you are just like, yeah, that's me, that's me, that's me. And the truth is that there's a time and a place to be quiet in the conversation, especially when it's starting to get heated. I will be the first one, and you've heard it on our podcast. You've heard it when Tony and I, speak in front of groups. If the conversation is going past the point of being a conversation to being an all-out battle, then yes, you need to be quiet. You need to bring literally the emotional temperature down. But at the same time, you can't just take that handy little broom and sweep it under the rug and pretend like it's never happened, right? Because that's what a lot of couples do. They get involved in this pattern of shutdown, and then, well, we're just not going to talk about it until it like blows over, right? And then it's just gone, and you have this elephant that starts out like, this big, and suddenly, before you know it, you have this ginormous elephant of all this unresolved stuff in your marriage, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger till the two of you, you start out like this on the day you get married, but because this elephant has gotten so big and the silent treatment and these communication patterns, all of a sudden the two of you, and I'm not going to go too far so my hands go out, but you go from here to like this, and you're like, I can't see you. There's this giant thing in the middle, right? And that thing sometimes is the result of the silent treatment, right? And the reason it doesn't work is because couples don't know how to use it effectively. They fall into this pattern of, I'm going to do the silent treatment, and then I'm just not going to talk about it, right? And that doesn't work. I mean, I know some of you have just said you've been too upset to talk. What are some of those topics that cause you to go into the silent treatment? Is it talking about kids? Is it talking about in-laws or your parents? Is it talking about finances? Is it talking about your sex life? Tell me, those of you that want to just pop money, that's a big one. That's a huge issue for couples. Is it how you're spending your time? Is it who you're spending your time with? All of these different things impact us because they cause a reaction inside of us. And so in doing that, we don't fully engage in our marriage. And the more that you use the silent treatment as either an unconscious reaction or a conscious one, the more distance you put in your marriage. And you and I both know that too much distance in a marriage is going to result in there not being a marriage, right? So ongoing disagreements. One of the things about ongoing disagreements is that the two of you need to get resolution on those because they just become patterns. I was talking to somebody earlier today, and he was sharing with me that he and his spouse go through this thing where they're basically repeating the same arguments time and time and time again. And I just looked at him, and he's a friend, so I would not coach him. But I said, you guys need a third party, right? You need to get a system in place. You need to be doing things differently than what you've been doing because you're spiraling. Instead of, the happy spiral that's like, we're on the Ferris wheel and we're going, it's getting bigger and bigger on this roller coaster. Can't get a signal. Is that me that you can't hear me? Is there any trouble with me, or are you saying in your marriage you can't get a signal? I'm not sure about that comment there. But that being said, here are some things that you can do when you start to feel like you're going, okay, thank you for helping each other. I appreciate that. When you start to feel yourself going down that path, because I will tell you what happened in our marriage. Tony and I had learned to do the silent treatment from watching my parents. I brought that behavior into my marriage, and we kept up with that for probably the first 8 or 9, maybe even 10 years of our marriage. Tony and I would have some kind of conflict. I would not like the confrontation. I would do the arms crossed, stone face, and Tony would just get irritated, right? And I would be stubborn. How many of you out there are stubborn? That's why the silent treatment works for you, because you can hold out longer than your spouse. Exactly. So that being said, what you've got to do is you've got to have a plan for when you start to feel like you're shutting down, because you're going to feel that way. It's a behavior pattern. You're not just going to flip a switch or watch one Periscope or, hold on, there's something just popped up on my phone. You got to have a plan. You've got to have a plan to calm yourself down and then to re-engage in the conversation once you've had time to think through what your position is. Once you've had time to process what your love is talking about. I mean, it's not just like, well, I'm not going to talk to you and we're just going to pretend it doesn't happen. That doesn't strengthen your marriage. Instead, saying, you know what, I need some time to calm myself down. Never mind what you've got to work on. I need some time to calm myself down, get my thoughts in order. Let's talk about this in half an hour. Let's talk about this in, an hour, whatever it is, but not like, let's talk about this in 10 years. Okay, that's not a pass. That's not what I'm saying. We don't talk about any type of long-term, we're never going to talk about this conversations here at One Extraordinary Marriage. And then when you come back together, you need to, you can't change your spouse. You can't change how they react to things. What you can change is how you react, what you say in those moments, what you put out there. And this is just one part of the communication piece that couples struggle with. And, a few of you mentioned money, you mentioned ongoing disagreements, you mentioned, some of you I know who haven't said anything, I know that kids are sometimes a reason for the silent treatment. I know that disagreements over sex can be a reason for the silent treatment. There are so many reasons why, but the important thing is that, like those of you that joined me on the scope, you realize that it doesn't have to be that way. You realize that it's not effective, and you don't want to keep going down that path. So I want to share with you something that Tony and I are going to be releasing, and I'm actually just going to show you a little screenshot of this right now because I'm working on it, and that's why I wanted to. So I'm going to show you my computer screen right there. Says, coming soon, Rescue My Marriage Today pilot program. And this is part of the reason why I jumped on the scope today, was because Tony and I are working on this and I'm working on all the details, and one of these thoughts about the silent treatment came up. We're going to be covering it in quite a bit of detail in the program, but I wanted to let you guys know about it because it's going to be a pilot program starting in April. But if you want to find out about it, you're going to want to go to oneextraordinarymarriage.com/waitlist. We're going to be just only opening this program when we do to 50 people. So it's going to be very exclusive, and it's not going to be for everybody. But if communication, if the silent treatment, if those ongoing disagreements about money or other topics have ever been an issue in your marriage, ever, my guess is that they will continue to be. And so you want to go to oneextraordinarymarriage.com/waitlist. You're going to see that screenshot that I just showed you, the coming soon Rescue My Marriage Today pilot program. You're going to want to get your name on that list, because like what I just talked about, this is just scratching the surface of the silent treatment. But I know that if you jumped on the scope because the title grabbed your attention, that you're probably going to at least want to get on the wait list, because we're going to be talking money, finances, kids, sex. Of course, it's Tony and Lisa at One Extraordinary Marriage. Of course, we're talking about sex. We're going to be talking about dating. We're going to talk about communication. We're going to talk about how you manage your time. You're going to want to be a part of that group, but the only way you're going to find out about it is if you're on the wait list, and the only way you're going to get on the wait list is if you go to oneextraordinarymarriage.com/waitlist and get on there. So what I want to know is, as I wrap up this scope, how many of you want to stop doing the silent treatment in your relationship? Or if you're listening to the scope because your spouse is the one, how many of you wish that they would stop doing it? You can either do hearts, or you can, just say me, or I wish they would, or whatever in the comments, just so I can see it. Because poor connection, broken heart. Okay, well, broken heart, you know what? We are probably going to post this up on our YouTube channel, the One Extraordinary Marriage YouTube channel, as well as on the oneextraordinarymarriage.com on our site. So if you are still having trouble with this, make sure you're connected with us on One Extraordinary Marriage, because that's where we bring you this marriage transformation advice, marriage transformation practical applications that you guys can take and say, you know what? Just because we've always done marriage this way doesn't mean we have to keep doing marriage this way. I mean, isn't that true? I mean, just because, think about it with your own, like your health and nutrition. Just because you always had a bowl of ice cream for dessert, that's how I grew up, we always had a bowl of ice cream for dessert, doesn't mean that as an adult, I'm still engaging in that same behavior. Because you know what? Now that I'm in my 40s, if I have a bowl of ice cream every day after dessert, that's not so good for me. Same thing with your marriage. Just because you've always done something, if it's not working, don't keep doing it. Get plugged into the resources. Get plugged into the new strategies and new techniques that can make a difference. And so we're going to be sharing bits and pieces of what's going to be coming up in that Rescue My Marriage Today program. Thanks for the thumbs up. I appreciate that, R. Watson. So make sure when you see those scopes that you hop on them. Make sure that you get over to the wait list so that you don't miss being one of the first people to hear about this program. Because like I said, the program is only going to be for the first 50 when we release it. And we're working out all the details. We're building it out. It's going to be jam-packed. And it's going to make a difference in marriages all around the world. And we want your marriage, your relationship to be one of those. So thank you for joining me, Elisa DiLorenzo with One Extraordinary Marriage, and I will see you next time.